Welcome to the Creative Brookline podcast. My name is David, and I'll be your host. Self-taught artist Avery Judge has been using social isolation to her advantage. The Brookline native will be studying art at the Pratt Institute in New York City in order to expand on her artistic knowledge and skills. Listen to how Judge hopes to better establish her style before coming back to the place she calls home. How about you just kind of give me a little brief introduction of yourself, like where you're from, how did you end up in Brookline? You mentioned school, so what are you studying?
Well, my name is Avery Judge. I'm 18 years old and I've lived in Brookline my whole life. I've always done art, but I recently just started painting this year, and I mostly work in abstract paintings, and I'm just trying to figure out what my style is and explore as many different techniques as I can on my own.
Do you have any specific artists that you really like?
All the artists I like more because of their composition and the colors they use rather than how it relates to my own art. I don't want to do or base my art off of someone else's work or even take inspiration, because for me it feels like copying, even though I know it's not that. What I really like in other artists is how they use color. This guy named Holton Rower, he does acrylic pour and he makes these really huge big paintings, and I think the way he uses color is extremely cool. I always like Frida Kahlo for her messages and her message and her artwork, but yeah, that's primarily it. I don't really know enough about artists yet to love them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, is that something you're hoping to learn? Because you're going to school for art, I assume, right?
Yeah, that's what I also want to learn, because I don't really know a lot of artists. So that's also something I want to learn about, because I think art history is very interesting and cool.
So what was it like growing up in Brookline? Were there a lot of art classes that you took, or was there things in the area that kind of inspired you more to pursue art?
I think I would always just like doing art. It was kind of like a coping thing. I didn't really fit in Brookline, so I kind of used it as a coping mechanism. I only took the basic art classes in middle school and then didn't take any art classes freshman year at Brookline High School until I went to boarding school, and then I took art classes my junior and senior year.
Can you remember an instance where you really first started to get into art, like when you were younger?
Probably in fourth grade, I would draw more realistically. I try to draw faces. I never taken a technical class, so I teach myself all this stuff and then try to do it myself, and just did that for a bunch of years. And then when I went to private school, I had an IB class. It wasn't really an art class. It was more art history. And that allowed me to go back into art, because I kind of took a hiatus from it. And then I branched out more into abstract rather than realistic, and did a lot of different stuff with that. But it's mostly focused on bodies and faces for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Obviously, I'm a very novice person when it comes to art. I only took high school classes, but I think the body and drawing humans and forms and figures is very, very difficult. You have to practice it a lot and take courses, or just keep doing whatever it is you do to really get those forms down.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm most excited for at Pratt, because I've never officially learned the technical skills. That's one thing I'm actually looking forward to, but I'm also nervous because I've never learned it. But I also think it gives me an advantage, because I didn't start on a path from learning all the technical skills and then branching out from that. I kind of just tried every little thing that wasn't conventionally art classes and figured it out my own way.
Would you consider yourself self-taught?
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
Thank you.
You mostly do painting, correct?
Yes.
Is that kind of your main medium, or have you explored with other mediums before?
Yeah, I have. I used to do drawing a lot and sketching. I did sketching human faces for a lot of years. I was kind of stuck in that, and then in the past couple of years, I kind of just exploring with pastels, spray paint, crayons. I sketch out my ideas before I paint, so I guess I would consider I do drawing and painting, because I sketch out all my ideas and then I paint them. So I guess it's a mixture of painting and drawing. But yeah, I've explored like ceramics too.
Like, how do you usually get your ideas for like some of the work that you do?
Either I just start writing and coming up with messages I want my art to convey. So I'll like my big ones, which are the body, the abstract colors behind it. I wanted to figure out a way to show the progression of vulnerability and understanding emotion. So usually I go off and like think about all the themes I want my paintings to convey, and then I think about how many I want to be in a series. And I typically do 3 or 5. And then I'll figure out the sizes and then the colors I want to use. I'll map out all my colors on paper and figure out and make a small draft of each painting. And then I'll make several drafts of that until I really like the colors. And then I'll go onto the canvas and sketch it out and then color it in like basically like a coloring book.
Yeah, that's a cool process. I've actually never heard that before.
Personally, for me, it makes me feel better because like it makes me feel like I'm in control and I have less opportunity to make a mistake.
How about some of like the messages that you like to portray in your work? What are some of the themes that you like to explore?
Usually I do personal stuff that I have trouble expressing in words. It's kind of a coping mechanism. So like typically I focus on like mental disability, mental illness and mental disability stuff that I have trouble expressing. It's easier for me to make a painting about it because it's also in a way less vulnerable because it's abstract. You don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. But just putting it down on canvas lets me kind of heal or kind of cope with that in a way that's not so vulnerable and direct in myself. And it's just a better method for me. So mostly it's focused around mental illness, like anxiety, depression, trouble coping with emotions. And then one series that I did stemmed off from it was about how women are portrayed on social media nowadays and how that relates to the suffrage movement. But that was the only really political piece I did, usually about mental illness.
Yeah, what was that piece like doing the women's suffrage one?
That was really fun. My sister asked me to make her a painting, and I made it too much to what she wanted that I actually didn't like it, if that makes sense. And so I like immediately after I finished it, I came up with an idea, and then I just pumped out like 5 paintings. I like spent like 2 days planning out them, and it took me like a day to make each one, but probably my favorite paintings I've done so far.
And do you normally share your art with your family?
They usually just come into my room and take pictures of it and send it to people, but I'll like show them sometimes if I'm proud of something, but I'm not very showy about my art in general, which is something I'm trying to get better on.
What has mostly like held you back? Are you just like nervous about people seeing your stuff?
Yeah, I think I just get in my head and I don't really have enough self-esteem to actually put myself out there. It's kind of like a personal coping method, so I don't really want everyone to see it, but that's just because I need to get over my own barriers from letting myself show people what I created.
Yeah, no, I totally feel you on that. Like, I write like a lot of poetry, especially when I'm like going through things, and I used to like not like sharing it because it was personal. And so, yeah, like it's hard to break out of that mentality.
If you like it and you're proud of what you work, you still don't necessarily want to show everyone. When you're creating something, like when you're writing poetry, you're not really thinking, oh, I want to show 20 people this.
And I'm thinking of an earlier point you mentioned because you said you felt like you didn't really like fit in the Brookline or like when you were going to school in Brookline. Why was that?
I was bullied a lot, so that's also, I think, why I went to art, because it was like a source of figuring out my problems, and because I was bullied a lot, that was what came out of it, if that makes sense. That what helped me deal with all of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally got that. You've done a few series that you showed me. Have those series been like picked up in the Brookline area? Like, have you been able to exhibit those like in your hometown?
Right now, I don't really want to exhibit on anything. I don't really want to sell my work because right now I just want to advance my craft without having to think about what other people think about it or having to like worry about if it's good enough to get into galleries or good enough to sell and all that stuff. I don't necessarily need the money right now, so I just want to do it because I love to make art.
So what was this you sent me the 172 Steps Back series? Was that your women's suffrage one?
Yeah.
All right, so how long did it take you to do that? Because you did a lot of pieces.
It actually only took me a week, which I was actually surprised about because these big ones took me like 3 weeks to do. I was at my boyfriend's house in the Cape, and his mom is an art curator, so she was like hovering over me when I did it. But I did like one a day, and then went on to the next one, and just did that the whole week. And it was really satisfying how fast I could get them done. I think it was just because it was a smaller canvas that I was working on these canvases. They're 36 inches by 48 inches, then going to 24 by 18 inches. It just made it like so much easier.
Were you happy with how they came out?
Yeah, I worked my butt off on them, so I was happy with it when I finished it.
Gotcha. Do you have a preference of like different kinds of colors or shapes? Like, do you like warmer colors, cooler colors? Do you kind of just experiment with everything?
Well, this is something I noticed. When I was more depressed, I really went towards darker colors, and now I look at it and I'm like, ooh. But now I really like pastels, like working with lighter colors, just because for me it's more pleasing. Like looking at like lavender and like light pink and stuff like that, it's just very pleasing tones. And you can still like convey a strong message without having it be like in your face, if that makes sense, if you use lighter colors.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have like an end result with what you want to do? Like, do you want to be like a studio artist? Do you want to work in art
Yeah,
history?
hopefully if I'm able to make money off of it, that is what I would like to do. But I'm also open to exploring other things if I can't make a living off of that. Personally, I don't know what I want to do, but my goal is to be a studio artist. But I'm just going to Pratt because they have classes that I want to take, and I'm going there because I want to learn.
Nice. Are you excited?
I'm excited, but not at the same time because of COVID. That's the only reason I'm not excited. But if it was like a normal year, I'd be, yeah, very excited but nervous.
Going to college already, especially if you're going away from home, is like intimidating enough. And I think this whole situation obviously makes it a little bit harder for your grade.
Like Pratt didn't come out until like yesterday saying that they're going back, but like all the studio classes, which are most of your classes, are going to be in person, but all the like critical analysis and like art history classes are going to be virtual, and it's just very confusing how they're figuring it all out, and it's very up in the air. It's a lot more stressful with the pandemic.
All these stresses in the pandemic, has that kind of impacted your work at all, like your art at all?
The pandemic allowed me to actually have more time to do my art during school because I would just put my class on and then mute myself and then paint the whole day. So that actually helped a lot. Yeah, so actually a lot of people are not happy because the pandemic kind of stopped their lives, but I actually have no problem with it because it gives me more time to paint, and I would be doing this anyways if there wasn't a pandemic. I would just be inside painting.
So would you say that art for you is kind of like a good coping mechanism?
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's like incredible to think about the power that like art and music and those kinds of things have on people. Have you been able, like, do you have any friends too that do art and like you guys kind of share ideas or anything?
Nope.
Oh,
That's
really?
No, I don't have any friends.
Is that kind of
That
something else you're hoping for with going to Pratt?
Yeah, that's something on especially because I went to like a preppy boarding school. It was really I was like only one of the few art kids there. I don't think anyone else in my year is going to art school. So yeah, that was the one thing that sucked because I was more creative than everyone in my like if that makes sense. Like a more creative personality. Like I was going to art school and nobody really was interested in going to art school at my grade. So that was one thing I'm excited for at Pratt is people that are creative and like want to pursue a creative profession and make friends with people that are creative. I think that would help inspire my art and just again help me grow as an artist being in that community.
Yeah, for sure. I think right now, especially, like we're starting to see how much like art and the arts and like going to studios and things like that, like obviously we're not really still allowed to go to museums. What has it been like, or what do you think about the state of art and like the current state of the world that we're in right now?
I think a lot of artists are, this is in terms of like social media and also art stores. I think a lot of artists are painting more and creating more just because they have all this time. They don't have to, well, if they're not, if their job is a studio art, then it doesn't really impact them. But if they're like, it's a hobby for them and they have to work, now they have all this time to create. And I saw a lot of kids my age drawing and painting in their free time just because you have so much time and nothing to do with it. You're stuck in the house. You can't really go out. So I think it's actually beneficial. But at the same time, in terms of financial struggles, I think it also is probably harder for people because, at least in my experience, shipping from art stores is extremely expensive, and art supplies are very expensive in general. So I think that having to constantly ship art supplies is probably not helpful, and that's probably the only downside. But I have seen that when I go to buy more paint, most of it is out because I think people are buying big jugs of it because they have nothing else to do.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of becoming an artist now.
Yeah.
How about I don't know how politically involved you are, but what are your thoughts about the current political climate and the whole Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's kind of been going on?
Personally, I like social media has made it into a big thing, which I think that there's a lot of performative activism going on, but I've been keeping up on it and reading about it. And personally, for me, it's not shocking that this has happened because this is not like a one event. This has been happening since the Watts riots and the LA riots. This is just like another block in the road. And I think that maybe because we're in a pandemic, it got more attention. But also, I think that it was just like a bunch of reports of police brutality in a short amount of time that like George Floyd's death kind of just ignited it. I think that people need to kind of go to like the I don't know the government and say there needs to be heavier restrictions on who can become a police officer. There needs to be like, psych evaluations for racist bias against for future and current police officers, and there needs to be bias training for police officers. And I think that's probably the next step, but I haven't seen a lot of people doing that. And I think the protests explain that people are fed up with this. The only thing that concerns me is coronavirus, and that, but it's kind of like, which is more significant, protesting something that's been happening for years with a chance that you might get sick, or staying home and not taking part in something that means an incredible amount to you. So
Yeah, because there's only so much you can do, obviously, at home and through social media and stuff like that. Have you gone to any protests or anything?
no, personally, just because it makes me too nervous. And
Mm.
they got some of them got violent. Not the protests got violent, but it just the interactions was not, that made me too scared to go out and do that. Plus, I really just don't want to get sick. But it was at any other time I would have gone.
Have you thought about using your art to kind of portray messages about things that we just said?
Not really, and that sounds bad, but just because like I feel like so many people are doing it. And so I don't want to just be another person that's doing it, especially since it's like the hype now, it's a trend to like bring attention to all these people. And I've already been aware of it for like at my history essay for my IB class was on the LA riots. I feel like it would be performative activism for me just because it's like a big topic now just to do it because it's a big topic, if that makes sense. But I do try to include diversity in my art and be conscious of not just only using white bodies.
Yeah, for sure. Like I noticed that too with the pictures you sent me. And you said like last week you were working on a series too, right? I don't know if we talked about that yet.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to do acrylic pours, which is basically you, it's what it sounds like. You pour paint on a canvas and it creates these kind of cool textures on it, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. It's fun to do, but super messy. That's why my floor is so messy.
So you do, like, you literally do everything in your room.
Yeah, I
Wow.
have tarps put down, but it bled through the tarps and the towels, and I picked it up, and I was like,
Oh my God. Does that
so
drive
now
your
I have to
parents
scrub my
crazy?
floor down. Yeah, I got kicked out of any other room in the house, so I have to do it in my room.
I was like, maybe you could just like make like your own outdoor studio or something like in your backyard.
The only problem with that is my sister doing tie-dye business, so
Oh,
she's claimed the backyard, so I can't work there.
okay. So you and your sister are both kind of creative.
Yes, she she's just doing it because she's a teacher. She's 23. She also works in New York. She's doing it just to do something for the summer, and she wants to donate to charity too. So she's doing it just to keep herself occupied. But she's gotten like I don't know how many. She's gotten like a lot of orders.
Wow,
Like
that's pretty cool.
like 8. I don't know. She does orders like every week. And I thought she was like personally I thought she was gonna get like 20 people. But she got like I don't know, she got like 80 or more people. A lot of people order. It's a lot.
Yeah, people really are into tie-dyeing, I guess, right now. Do you have any other special talents that aren't related to art? Just wondering.
No.
Not
No,
really.
no.
You've quit all of your like your poetry writing days.
No, that was when I was sad and now I look at it and I was like, oh, it's kind of embarrassing.
So you're like, I'd much rather paint now.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want anyone to see this.
Gotcha. Yeah. What about like do you go to Boston at all like frequently? Like have you been to the MFA and those kinds of places?
Yes, I have. I haven't been there in a while, but there was this Basquiat exhibit that I was really looking forward to going, but coronavirus hit, so I couldn't go. That's probably the only thing I'm disappointed about. And I've already seen like the Frida Kahlo exhibit and everything like that. So galleries and museum in New York were what I was also looking forward to, which I can't really attend now, even when I go back to Pratt, especially since it's extremely bad in New York. Because Pratt gives you free pass to galleries and museums, which I was really looking forward to. So, like, that's only another thing that coronavirus kind of halted.
What do you think about the art scene in New York versus Boston?
Personally, I think it's a lot more prominent just because Parsons is there and Pratt is there, and there's a lot more. I don't know, like NYU they have that their music college. I don't know what it's called, but there's just and Juilliard's in New York, and then there's a lot of dance schools in New York. So I think it's just a more creative community in general than Boston. Just maybe because it's bigger, but also just because I think artists tend to go to New York. Plus, I think the galleries in New York are probably a lot better than Boston, in my opinion.
Do you have like some memorable experiences like in Boston or in Brookline with art specifically? Like do you have a favorite spot in Brookline to like maybe do some art?
My room, basically. No.
Gotcha.
I typically do art in my room. So I don't know. I found working outside. I worked outside in Cape Cod. Like there's a lot of dust that goes over your painting and then wind and stuff. It's just like a hassle to deal with. So it's just easier to work inside. So I guess not really.
We touched upon this too a little bit. What are you hoping to get from going to Pratt in terms of learning about art and maybe working on your skills?
Literally just to get better at art and get a better understanding of who I am as an artist. Because right now, that is what I'm discovering and that is what I'm trying to discover. So by the end of Pratt, I hope I get a better understanding and more confidence in myself as an artist.
Is there any place in the country that you want to end up eventually?
Honestly, back in Boston, I really like Boston. And so I really am just going to Pratt because I really liked the school and it was my top choice. And I was lucky enough to get in. But I don't want to stay in New York. I just want to go there and study and then come back.
Yeah, for sure. I guess on that note, like what's your favorite thing about Boston?
It's just home for me. Like I'm most comfortable here. And I've made a lot of memories growing up. I like the atmosphere of the city. New York is too cluttered for me. In the part where Pratt is, it's very calm there. It's not like New York City, but uh, Boston is like the perfect blend of like a lot of people, but not too many.
Thanks for listening. Be on the lookout for more episodes in the future. This episode was hosted by David Ciaffarelli and featured Avery Judge. Sound engineering and editing by David Ciaffarelli. Music by Alita Stein. The Creative Brookline podcast is a big production.